Texas Lutheran University.
Good afternoon. I welcome you to today's keynote address. Thank you very much for joining us and making the walk over from Timmerman Room in Hine. Our keynote address today is being given to us by Dr. David Maldonado, Jr. His speech is entitled Sobre Viviendo como Resistencia. I want to give a little backstory about Dr. Maldonado before I formally introduce him. When I first moved to Seguin, I was looking for something to read to acquaint me with the town. At that time, Tim Barr, who used to work for our Center for Servant Leadership, suggested that I read Crossing Guadalupe Street. And it was an amazing read because it really let me familiarize myself with the history of Seguin. Last summer, I got the opportunity to teach Seguin High School students in an introduction to Mexican American Studies class. And I said, this is the book. This is the book that they have to read because they are from Seguin. So I'm going to read a student comment. At the end of the semester, we had evaluations and they were anonymous. So one of them might be sitting here because they're at the front. Some of the students are here. And one of them wrote, the most interesting part of this class was Crossing Guadalupe Street, because it gave a lot of information about the town I am currently living in. Dr. Maldonado also taught me that the things my parents teach I will use forever. The things you do as a kid can define who you are in the future. He taught me that with an education, our thoughts and our words are even more valuable, and that I can contribute to change. And I will tell you that his book did leave a lasting impression on my CMOS students. Dr. David Maldonado, as I noted, is a native of Seguin. He is the author of Crossing Guadalupe Street, Growing Up Hispanic and Protestant by University of New Mexico Press. His thought-provoking text highlights the complexities of growing up in a small town in South Texas during the 1940s and 1950s. As a Mexican-American Methodist, Maldonado learned to negotiate and survive in two different communities separated by ethnic and religious borders. His work continues to speak to us today as historical and contemporary borders continue to manifest themselves in our communities. Maldonado has served as a director of the Center for the Study of Latina and Latino Christianity and Religions at the Perkins School of Theology, Southern Methodist University. He has also served as the president of the Elof School of Theology and has held various teaching and administrative positions. He is also the founder of the Center for the Chicano Aged at the University of Texas, Arlington. And with that, please let us give Dr. Maldonado, Jr. a warm welcome.
Thank you very much. Dr. Marta, thank you so very much for your gracious invitation. And I must add that I am privileged to be part of this event. To sit during the luncheon and hear all of the outstanding scholars, authors, poets that we have among us was indeed inspiring. It made me appreciate even more the career that many of us have taken in higher education. So it is a privilege and an honor to be among such a distinguished group of scholars and students. You have made a significant contribution to the field, this field of study. My field of work was primarily in gerontology, or as they say, era estudiando a los viejitos, and now I'm one of them. So there's a certain part of me that is uncomfortable in studying yourself, but you cannot avoid it when you become or you come to the point where I am. I also, like some of you, colegas, I have done some work in religiosity and the Latino community. I agree with our colegas that the study of faith and the faith journeys within our community is so very important. And I think it is interesting that we are in a church-related institution of the Evangelical Lutheran Church. Well, I thank them, and I am pleased to be here. I have known your names, as you who are scholars and professors. I have seen your names, and without exception, I have been so impressed with your careers, and to finally meet some of you is inspiring. I congratulate you for having been recognized for your contributions. Dr. Mata, you have made it possible for me to come back home once more. We are in Seguin, and as you have stated, this is my hometown, and this is my birthplace. This is where it all started. I spent my formative early years in the barrio on Guadalupe Street. There are some who suggest that you cannot really come back home. To some extent, they are correct. But today I am surrounded by family and friends who make me feel at home. And you, as a university, as an organization, as individuals, have made me feel en casa. My wife, Charlotte Nieto Maldonado, is right here with me. She makes sure that I get to my next place. I'm also so proud and pleased that our son, Carlos, who came all the way from San Diego, California. So you can imagine leaving San Diego, California behind to be in Seguin for the weekend. That's how much he cares to be with us. But I have my primas and primos, los Hernandez, where are you, Vida, and Mono, and ¿dónde está Mono? Por ahí, mira, aquí está Mono, Neto, Florinda, and todos ustedes. You inspire me. You make me so appreciative to be part of the family, and I thank you. I left Seguin as a young man of 17. I am now 75. Qué fácil es decirlo, ¿verdad? I am now 75, but I left Seguin when I was 17, leaving to seek my dreams. I vividly remember the day I took the train to El Paso and to the Mexican border, where a new world of learning and experience expanded my world. My hometown provided me the foundations rooted in familia. I forgot to mention my sister Emma, in familia, cultura, and the spiritual and moral values that shaped me and have sustained me and guided me ever since. El Paso opened my eyes to the border. It opened my eyes to the urban barrios. Seguin was a small town. There were like 14,000 when I left Seguin. It's about double now, I think. So I went from Seguin that was dominated by by the German population. It was a very German population, and look where we are. And the Mexican American was really a minority population. But I left this town and moved to El Paso to seek college and higher education. And at the border, I discovered a lot about myself. I discovered about my identity. You see, because every time I went to Juarez to get a haircut or get gas for the car, and no one asked any questions. But coming back to El Paso, I had to state who I was and what I was. And I couldn't say, soy mexicano, as I knew myself to be in Seguin. Somos todos mexicanos acá. No, that didn't work there. I couldn't say soy chicano because the Border Patrol did not recognize that term. And Mexican American was confusing to many people at that point. I had to say, for the first time, American. And that shook me a little bit because in Seguin, los Americanos were what? They were the Anglos. They were the whites. We were not los Americanos, we were los Mexicanos. So when I went to live on the border, I had to realize my identity is much more than being a Mexicano from Sequin. It means that I am Mexican-American, an American citizen, that I had to declare every time I crossed the border. So moving from Sequin to El Paso was an important step for me in my own ethnic self-identity, understanding that significant border, but also living in the urban barrios, the segundo barrio de El Paso, where every time you went out to the street, you had to deal with the sniffers or the marihuanos. That was my daily life in the urban barrio of El Paso, going to college. So I went from a small Texas town where I lived among and as a member of an ethnic minority population to a border town, a border city, where the mayor, the police, the teachers, city leaders were all Mexicanos. Right? I realized I was not a minority. Yeah. I could not be defined, and I would not allow myself to be defined as a minority. I discovered that I was Mexican-American, an American citizen. And so living on El Paso and living on the border helped me, challenge my identity, but also helped me to grow into a fuller self-understanding, or as I would say, a fuller self-ethnic identity that is so important to me. But it is good to be back home. I cannot help but notice that this is a new day, or may I say, a different day for Sequin and its Latino population. The demography has vastly changed. It is different from when I left it. As Latinos in Sequin, we are no longer the minority numerically living in segregation. We are now the majority population. Fíjate, for those of you who are not from Sequin, you must recognize the tremendous transformation that has happened demographically in this town. We are not where we could be in terms of representation in key structures, such as the city council and the school board. But the future is before us. It is up to us to make our hometowns. I'm very proud of my hometown, but some of you from El Valle or from Houston, and you're proud of those hometowns. But I suggest to you that those of us who have a hometown that we love and identify with, we need to look at them not only as something of the past where our roots are grounded, but look at our homes in terms of what they could be. Look at our pueblos. Look at our communities. Look at our gente there and dream what it can be. You can make a difference. May Sequin not be simply be a place where you went to college or where you commute to work or come to a conference. You can make a difference in Sequin or wherever your hometown can be. And may I suggest that just being here is already making a difference. Can you imagine all of this raza at Texas Lutheran College, a university? When I was growing up, we used to call this place El Luterano. Molina, remember when I was doing time with mi primo Molina? This was El Luterano, ¿verdad? And El Luterano was that place, but primarily a white institution. It was very expensive. We could not even dare dream about going to school here. Unless you were a janitor or a maintenance person, you never came on campus. I think this is only my second time on this campus. So to come back here and see nuestra gente on the faculty, on the staff, as students, it is like, what happened? What's going on? And to hear your president speak today and say that it has gone really to become a Hispanic serving college and university, that's huge. That's fantastic when you consider where it was primarily a historically white institution, and now it is a Hispanic serving institution. I think we should all applaud, and I thank Texas Lutheran for what it's done to open the doors and make it possible for our students to come to school here, and for people like Jennifer and Dr. Gonzalez and the rest of you to be here and prepare the next generation. Sequin is an historic town. It's among the first towns established in Texas. And I say this very carefully. I hope there's not too many of you who are in law enforcement. But unfortunately, it was also an early center for the notorious Texas Rangers. Okay? And I'm not trying to make heroes out of the Lone Ranger and people like that. But the Texas Rangers were feared by our people at that time in history. Sequin was a big early center of the establishment and the creation, the growth of the Texas Rangers. All you have to do is go down Kingsbury. Those of you from Sequin, when you get to South Guadalupe Street, you'd go down to the river. In that area, they call Walnut Springs. This is where the Texas Rangers were. As I drive around town, the streets are the same. I remember them by name: Austin Street, Crestdorn, Kingsbury, Ireland Street. I remember the names, but the neighborhoods have dramatically changed. See, Guadalupe Street, where I grew up, and Emma grew up, and you visited me, used to be a major boundary between El Barrio and the Anglo part of town. You have to be careful when you cross town, or when you cross Guadalupe Street. Today, when I cross Guadalupe Street, I'm not leaving the barrio. It's just another street in the barrio. And actually, the whole town of Sequin has become a barrio, especially when you look at the older Sequin. Older Sequin is one big barrio. To get out of the barrio of Sequin, you have to go towards New Braunfels, along the river, and you see those beautiful neighborhoods, and you know who lives there, right? Or for a while, you have to move east to escape the barrios, right? So the white flight has continued to occur. And to some extent, white flight is probably a good explanation as to why Sequin has become one big barrio, because the whites have moved to those nicer neighborhoods outside, allá por los afuera. They have left us. Nos han dejado en el barrio y con el barrio. Sequin is now in our hands. And I'm going to talk later about how we can make Sequin different from what it is. But I'm suggesting to you that the same has happened in other places in Texas, small towns, a white flight, and the old port part of town, becomes the historic Sequin or the historic San Benito or whatever. This is a new day for demography changes, for population movements, what institutions are doing, and what we as a people now represent. Jennifer, I am so, when I think back of when I left and come back of seeing this, I am amazed what you have done. I am amazed that there's been a Mexican-American program here. I'm amazed at what about 25% of your students are Hispanic. That's almost like 1 out of every 4 students at Luterano or Latin American. This is an incredible change and transformation. And so to be invited to come back and be part of this is a privilege. And it is something that to me is very special because it's what I have given my whole life to. I am in awe of what you have done at Luterano. Ethnic studies have taken a beating across the nation, as you know. But here at TLU and Sequin, you have prevailed. You have overcome history and socioeconomic challenges. Your presence and your efforts embody the determination to achieve dreams that originated with our ancestors, nuestros antepasados. There's a man in my story, and the story Mono, your story Neto, and Vida Todos, named Bernabé Maldonado. Bernabé Maldonado was our great-grandfather. Came to this area in the mid-1880s. 1880s. And Samuel Maldonado, our grandfather, my grandfather, was born in 1885, down Highway 123 towards Stockdale. Bernabé came with a young family seeking safety and a livelihood, doing what he knew best, ranchero, agricultural work. He became a tenant farmer. That was what our people did. They did not own the land anymore. They worked the land for Mr. Williams, for Mr. Bloomberg, for all of those who were the landowners. Now, can you imagine what was going on through Bernabé's mind, in the minds of many like him, as they moved northward to settle this land, to claim new hopes and new dreams? Now remember, Bernabé Maldonado came to Mexico in the mid-1880s, and he arrived and landed right smack in the middle of the Texas Rangers. Really? Now that can be kind of scary for a lot of people in those days. Can you imagine what must have been going through his mind as he saw his new surroundings? Remember what must have been to be a Mexican in 1880, all right? There was excitement because it was a new place, a new location. There was anticipation about what waited for him. There was fear when he saw what was going on. Dare he dream? Can you imagine dreaming, hoping, when you're surrounded by the Texas Rangers? When you are brand new coming in from Mexico in 1885? I suggest that in the midst of fear and caution, Bernabé knew hope. In the midst of fear and caution, Bernabé experienced hope. He had to learn hope. Hope for his children and his family. His biggest challenge then must have been how to survive. How do you overcome such difficult and challenging circumstances so that his children and generations after them could have the chance for a new life and to have their own dreams and their own hopes? ¿Cómo sobrevivir? How do we survive? Sobrevivir is, for those who don't know Spanish, sobrevivir means to overcome, okay? To live over means to be able to live over many difficulties. And overcoming, you go back into Spanish, is sobrevivir. So to sobrevivir means overcoming those difficult situations. Today, we celebrate the dreams and commit ourselves to continue Bernabé's legacy and of those like him. You who are teachers and professors are carrying on with the task of assisting the next generation claim their own dreams and to equip them with the necessary tools and knowledge and confidence to reach those dreams and make them a reality. That is really what we're about. That's why we're here, to celebrate, to support, to endorse what the Jennifers and the rest of you, Roberto, all of you professors are doing for the next generation. Students, you represent the future and our hope for tomorrow and for today. You are making many dreams come true. May the professors keep us grounded in history and the legacy we have inherited. We are here, I recognize, yes, because of your persistence and your dedication. You have worked hard, you have studied hard, you have been disciplined, and you're able to be a senior at Sequin High School. That's why you're now at Texas Lutheran or in San Marcos as a graduate student, or the University of Houston, or down in the valley at Old Pan American and all those schools. You have worked hard, and you deserve to be here. But none of us made it to this place by ourselves. Yeah. We did not make it on our own. We are in debt to our parents, our teachers, our ancestors, and many who had hoped for us and hope in us. Our antepasados paid a heavy price, showed us the value of hard work, dreamed for us, instilled hope in us. Let us not forget them. Let us not forget the price that they paid. I can still remember when I was in college in El Paso, occasionally I would receive an envelope from mi abuelita, Isabel Molina. Isabel Molina was also there on Guadalupe Street. And after a while, I learned what to anticipate, because in that little envelope was a little scribble, you know, una viejita, can you imagine? Whenever I went to school, would scribble a note. But there was a dollar bill. I would find a dollar bill in mi abuelita's envelopes and letters to me. And they were wrinkled dollar bills. You could tell that she had held on to it. She probably had it in her handkerchief. Remember, I used to put them in their handkerchief and put it in here somewhere. Mi abuelita was one. That's where she kept her. That was her bank. That's where she kept her money. She was elderly, and she was poor. But she sent me that wrinkled dollar bill. She could have used that dollar bill for her needs back in those 50 years ago. She could have used that dollar to buy food or clothing or pay her bills. But instead, she invested that wrinkled dollar bill in my future, in my dreams. We are the children of wrinkled dollar bills. Where are the children of those gifts that are passed on to us with so much sacrifice, so much love, so much hurting, so that we could eat and stay in our hope, in our schooling? That fed not only my stomach, but it fed my desire and dedication to push forward. I don't know whether you would consider mi abuelita a dreamer like we do today, but I think she was. She was one who put it in my hands to do with it what I had to do. That is an ancestor of mine. Dreaming was not easy for many of our ancestors. Our ancestors struggled with incredible limited resources. And let's face it, most of them were poor. Many of you may be fortunate to come from historically middle-class families or came con dinero de Mexico, but not the families that I knew around Seguin, certainly not my family. We, as I like to remind our sons and granddaughters, I am one generation away from poverty. One generation away from poverty. I am the child of that poverty. I'm the product of that poverty. That poverty shaped me and informed me. But in that poverty, I learned from my father and mother that there is hope and there's a dream to be had. My parents, like many of your parents, poor families, trabajadores de la tierra, worked the land. There's an area not too far away from here called La Paloma Blanca. How many of you have heard La Paloma Blanca? Okay. La Paloma Blanca is down the street on Kingsbury or Court Street. You go out, there's a brick building, La Paloma Blanca. That was an area that was called La Paloma Blanca. My father, David, the son of that sharecropper Samuel, worked the land also as a sharecropper. He worked with a mule that pulled his plow, all right? My mother cleaned houses. Anita, Molina, Maldonado, cleaned houses and took care of other people's children so that her children could eat and survive. Though it may be difficult for us to imagine dreaming in those situations, circumstances, yet they dream. I remember one summer, my mother and mi abuelita took us kids to pick cotton in East Texas. Needville, Texas, somewhere in that area. The humidity and the heat of East Texas was challenging enough. At the end of that summer, I was hoping for a bicycle or a toy or algo, baseball glove. I mean, I had to borrow baseball gloves from Bono, a first base baseball glove. But can you imagine when we got back from picking cotton, instead of that bike that I was hoping for, our mother took that money, and guess what she bought us? A set of encyclopedias. Go figure. Now, at first we thought, now, what? Where's my bike? Where are my toys or what I'm going to play with? But I remember the excitement of opening those blue encyclopedia books. And the immediate thirst of learning, to look at those pictures, to see those articles, what was there, not only history but the future, science, humanities, everything were in those encyclopedias. Now, I can imagine my mother picking cotton that summer. In the middle of that field, she was dreaming of her family and its future. In the midst of that insufferable heat, my mother was able to raise her sights a little bit higher for a better life for her family. That set of books and all that it represents was probably the most powerful lesson we could have received from my mother. Anita had an audacity of hope. She has an incredible well of hope for her family and her dreams. But you know what else that told me? Not only was she hopeful and dreaming about us, but she had the expectation that we would accept it, that we would embrace it, and we would take it, and we would work with it. However, the struggles of our ancestors facing oppressive social and economic circumstances go beyond our family stories and memories, though they are a huge part of that legacy we have inherited. It is through the act of remembering the struggles and the dreams of our families, our forebears, that we received insight and appreciation for that generation, those pioneers. The Antiguos came from a long history of racial and religious bigotry that began in Spain with the Inquisition that drove many from Spain to this part of the world. And once here, they pushed further north to escape such bigotry. Do not forget the role of the Inquisition in shaping and informing the dynamics of the Spanish conquest of the Americas, the development of the northern frontier entre las misiones en nuestro pueblo, and the population expression. Crypto-Jewish history continues to be discovered in Texas, New Mexico, California, and Arizona. Let us remember that you and I are the products of some historic encounters and conquest. First with the mestizos, children of the Spanish conquistadores y la madre India. La sangre del conquistador y la India run through our veins. The blood of the Spanish conquistador and the Indian woman run through our veins. El conquistador gave us our names, religions, his language, and much of our culture. Yet, La India gave us our spirituality, our food, and our deep cultural roots in the land. As mestizos, we represented a new people with a new identity and sense of peoplehood. We were a new racial and cultural blend who developed a new set of dreams. In the midst of that conquest by the Spanish or the Indian, the new population that came forth of that union, mestizos, were not giving up. They struggled to organize themselves and their dreams and their hopes for the future. The first encounter became an immediate conflict leading to conquest of the indigenous people. It was violent and it was bloody. But as mestizos, we came out of that conquest as a new people, determined not only to survive, but to develop new nations. Fíjate, in the midst of the conquest, we set out to create new countries, new nations, from Mexico, Central America, into South America. And even here in the northern parts of the Southwest, it is part of that cultural creation, that spirit, that determination of our ancestors. However, it was not long before another confrontation shaped the lives of our ancestors. This second confrontation was also violent and bloody. It was the encounter and confrontation with the expansionists moving westward under the flag and ideology of manifest destiny. War soon led to a new power and structure, and the rest is history. Our ancestors lost what little land they had and were relegated to the bottom of the racial, cultural, and economic structures. We are still paying the consequences of that second conquest. Our grandparents and parents paid the price, and the stories I just told about them reflects that history. Many of us lived through that. Many of us remember. Many of us are still paying the price. Some of us in this room were born and lived in the days of segregation and overt discrimination, ugly racism, and social oppression and economic structures, not only here in Seguin, but throughout Texas and the Southwest. As has been told already at this conference, we, my generation, our people here, came out of segregation. Juan Seguin Elementary School is a symbol of of discrimination in this country. We segregated barbershops, restaurants. The whole structure was separate in this community. We had to go to Sepúlvedas to get our haircut, or eat at El Apache or somewhere that would serve us. It is painful to remember those days. It is not a pleasant memory. We remember that reality. It is not fiction. It is not fiction. Memory is a powerful force. Memory is a powerful lesson. Memory shapes our worldviews. Such a harsh history, however, is not simply a historical prelude, nor is it an excuse. Here, let me say again, nor is history an excuse. Many of our primos and primas, friends, are still paying the price of that history. Go to the poor barrios of Sequin and around us. Look around, look at the poverty, and look at the educational profiles. We dare not forget why and how we got here. It has been a struggle to overcome history. Forgetting history, ignoring history, can easily lead to a personal sense of exceptionalism. Forgetting can be a form of denial, or it can be a source, a way of holding your breast and head up and saying, I did it, I worked for it, I earned it. I'm not like the others. The others did not. It's something like saying you're poor because you deserve to be poor. Those who reach certain success may be told and heard, but you're different. Those of you who become professional and middle class, don't be surprised if someday, somewhere, someone will come up and say, yeah, but you're different. You're not like los mojados, You're not like those immigrants. You're not like those poor people in the barrio. You are different, you are special. If we fall for such a sense of false exceptionalism, that we're an exception, we fall into believing that racism really does not exist, that the struggles and treatment of our ancestors did not matter, that you have escaped the past, that history does not matter. I am here to say history does matter. Those who suggest get over it, let it go, don't use history as an excuse, I think are misleading us into believing that we can also leave our communities and our people behind. But history is more than a prelude. History changed the world of our ancestors and the world we have inherited, and it continues to shape our lives and our familias. History is a set of powerful forces that shape the reality of our ancestors. It shaped their daily lives. It literally thickened their hands and their backs. It burned their skin. That history shaped what they could eat and what they could wear, how long their children, their babies could live. But you and I are here because our ancestors survived. Yes, we are shaped by that harsh history, but we are also here because of the hard work, the persistence, and the determination of our forebears. You and I would not be here if they had not successfully navigated through such difficult social, racial, political, and economic circumstances. Our ancestors had massive challenges to overcome. Their story and legacy is not one of passive victimization. They did not see themselves as passive victims. They fought back on a daily basis. It was a daily challenge to survive. It was a struggle to survive. And it was overcoming that struggle that you and I are here. They fought back. No se dejaron. Okay? They fought back. They did not give up. They persisted. They overcame. Sobrevivieron. I remember picking cotton in East Texas. There were so many times under that hot sun pulling the heavy sack. You wanted to just give up, sit down and wait for someone to come get you. But no, if you wanted to get paid, you wanted the reward for your hard work, you had to pull that sack and take it to the truck and have it weighed. Our ancestors did not give up. They overcame. They persisted. Here were our ancestors. How were ancestors able to survive and overcome? Our ancestral parents not only survived, but overcame immense challenges. They did not let their insurmountable circumstances overwhelm them. I suggest that we have much to learn from them. To survive, as I said, is to sobrevivir, and sobrevivir means to overcome. Our ancestors left us a legacy of overcoming. Aguantar does not simply mean to put up with, but rather to persist, to push on in spite of. To push on in spite of. Overcoming became a daily, issue. Survival and overcoming were daily challenges. Every day our ancestors faced challenges to solve in community, un día a la vez. Our ancestors developed skills, resources, relationships, communities that helped them overcome and to survive. And I'm talking about surviving those oppressive situations. Surviving took individual effort, yes, but it also involved familial and community support, individual determination and discipline, but also family and community were critical for resisting the forces of the day. Very few survive without them. If you were by yourself, if you didn't have comadres, compadres, tíos, tías, primos, you would not survive very long. Personal isolation and community discord did not get us where we are today. It took a village, or should we say it took la familia en el barrio, for our people to overcome. La familia, vecinos, amigos, would gather in time of help, either to pay your bills or build your house or help you with a funeral. Daily survival meant for many doing with what they had. That's to me, a very easy but very difficult concept to communicate. Como pobres, they had very little, and they learned to survive with minimal resources. They learned to survive with almost nothing. What they did not have, they created or built. You did with what you had and did without what you did not have. One story that is to me still, or memory still moves me, is my father. That you remember, Papa. My dad would have buckets of all nails that were bent nails that people would tear out when they were tearing down a house. My daddy would collect those nails. He would spend hours straightening those nails. He built our house on Guadalupe Street one room at a time, one board at a time, as he found them or as he could afford to buy them. If you go by the house and some of the sidings has fallen off, you'll see boards of different colors, because he would collect those boards to put them together. His only mode of transportation, as I remember, was a bicycle. We walked across town to attend church. You did with what you had. But having little, poverty did not stop our ancestors. Primo Molina, I think you were the one who told me this story. There's the legend that the Molina family walked far away from Laredo, from the border to Guadalupe County. They walked to get here, to get into this area that we know home. They did not see themselves as victims. Right? Rather, they were determined to work and to walk through their struggles. They overcame poverty and oppression of the day. Now, I was a student at UC Berkeley in the 1970s. And those of you who remember history, those were the days of the riots and the student movements at Berkeley. And I was a graduate student. And I was studying a lot. And I remember coming home and visiting with my dad. We were talking about the Juan Seguin and the swimming pools and all the discrimination. And my question to my dad was, ¿Por qué? How? Why did you put up with that? Why did you allow it to happen? And to me, that was a very, at first, a very emotional question. To challenge your own father, why did he put up with racism? Why did he put up with discrimination? Why did he put up having to go to the swimming pool and once again? And almost with tears in his face, it was por ustedes, for you guys. Our parents put up with a lot. It doesn't mean that they endorsed it, that they enjoyed it, that they thought it was a good idea for how we were being treated as a population. But in order for the family to survive, they learned to live within that system. It's almost like saying you learn to walk on the right side of the street, or otherwise you get your head bashed in. If you raise your head too high, you get it cut off or you lose your job. I don't know, but you can imagine that. But being a parent in those difficult days, they had to put up a lot in order for us to be here. Their strategy of resistance was survival. Their ways to overcome difficult times was a matter of learning how to maintain your life and you keep your job in order for the family to eat. You worked for the sake of family and community. It doesn't mean that they agree with that oppressive system. They knew what it was. They hated it. Let me tell you a story about my father. On Saturdays, my daddy worked 7 days a week, mowing the lawn and the greens at Max Target Park, golf course. But Saturday afternoons, he would put me on his bike, and we would go to get a haircut and then go to Mama Emma's house. And on the way over there, we would see and run into a lot of angles. And I hope you forgive me for using a bad word, okay? Will you forgive me? Good. My dad, I remember, he would tip his hat. He would say, "Good afternoon, good morning, Mr. Williams." He put it on. Y se pasaba y decía, "Desgraciado." You know, it's almost like saying, "Good evening, Mr. Williams." As soon as he went by, he said, "Damn you." You know, but he knew the system. He knew what was going on, and he did not endorse it. Our ancestors did not agree with their oppression, but they knew that it was there. Resistance in the midst of oppression also involved proving the oppressor wrong. When everybody told you that you were los de abajo, when everybody thought you don't belong there, when everybody told you you're not worth it, we had to, that you were not smart enough. who was telling me they were not smart enough to go to a certain school? You proved them wrong. You had to work extra hard to get your A's and the B's to pass. Okay, no way. Dale gas. Resistance also involves affirming your culture. Culture, language and culture, one of the major forces and powers of maintaining your survival. Right? And we had the jamaicanas, but we also had las fiestas patrias de 6 de septiembre, la música, la cultura that affirmed our Mexicanness. And that was our way of affirming who we were and what we were about. So keeping your culture was an important source of, ya me voy. Okay. An important way of overcoming. And I would suggest to you that this conference is another form of resistance, and because we are affirming our history and our culture and our issues. But today, let me say this. I don't want to be just about the past. It is not just about remembering the struggles. It's also recognizing what we need to do today. And that is that today, more than ever, we need to recognize the mutuality of survival, the mutuality of work in order to survive. Social justice has to be multidimensional for us to be surviving even today. Now, let me say that I was having a conversation with our son about social activism and all of the difficulties that the struggle have people with social activism. And let me say this, and that is that I was a community organizer in Fort Worth. I knew about I walked down the middle of the street with Cesar Chavez, right, in Fort Worth. I was a Chicano student at UC Berkeley, right? I know what social activism is about. But I also know that it takes more than just marching down the street or picketing. It involves preparing each one of you for the next generation, working together in our community. Resistance involves not accepting the status quo. Let us not accept any situation that demeans us, that keeps us at the margin, or denies our rights as individuals, human beings, and as citizens. I will stop here, but I just want to say that we come from a rich legacy of resisting forces and powers that kept us down, right? Through affirming our culture, affirming our hard work, affirming who we were. It's not over, folks. But let us all work together in crossing those borders. Gracias. Bienvenido. Oh, thank you.
For more information, please visit tlu.edu.